Okay, I do see everybody here in attendance and a few more. So first of all, let me say good evening and thank everybody for coming to this meeting of the Ways and Means Committee. It is Wednesday, August 18th, 2021, and the meeting is called to order at 5:30. Can we have a roll call, please? Councillor Bottomley.
Yes. Councillor Forgy.
Here.
Councillor Jarvis.
Here.
Councillor DeSorger.
Here.
Councillor Mayo.
Here.
And I'm Councillor Bottomley, present.
Thank you very much. Before we move forward, I would like to read the following statement that this meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Okay, thank you. Our next order of business is the approval of minutes from our July 20th, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion to accept these minutes as
I'll
submitted?
make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Second, Jarvis.
Thank you, Ed. All those in favor so indicate, please, by raising their hand and saying aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. We have no public hearing scheduled for this evening. If I may, and if it's okay with the committee, under our own rules, I'd like to be able to move some discussion items around this evening. I'd like to start with the temporary fire station. We do have people that are on board here. We also want to be able to cover the library this evening, and I would like to do this first on our agenda, if it's okay with everyone. Would you raise your hands and indicate it's okay to change the order of the agenda? Okay, thank you very much. So we will begin this evening, please, if we can, talking about our temporary fire station. I believe, Neil, you're out there because I know you're at another meeting. So I would like to have you bring us up to date some of the questions that we have regarding the temporary fire department. If you would be so kind as to help us understand what's going on, we'd really appreciate it. So, Neil?
Certainly. Thank you very much. And at least from one outside consultant, very graciously accepting taking our project out of order. Thank you for that in advance.
You're welcome.
In terms of progress, as you are aware or may be aware, we have been under construction for the last several months over on the former parking lot at Hope and Prospect Streets. The temporary apparatus bay structures and the modular office buildings have been erected. We are in the process of finishing the interiors of those buildings. We have worked very closely with the fire department to work out and to begin to schedule a transition plan into those spaces, and are anticipating occupancy as a temporary fire station full and foremost by the middle of September. I'm happy to take any questions or specific questions otherwise.
Anybody at this point? There was a whole list of questions that went out to the mayor. Okay, then I will start off with asking when exactly, you told us when the project has started, when exactly do we start paying for the project, and how much in funds have been expended to date, if any?
So we have incurred expenses. As I said, construction started several months ago. We have incurred expenses roughly in the order of magnitude of $627,000, slightly more. Admittedly, Councillor, I can't speak to the source of the funding or how the city is paying for it. I would defer to Liz or to the mayor to address those questions directly.
Now, are these costs that, well, okay, so according to the contract, when do we actually, this is the start of the project, how much has been expended to date?
That's
When we are in September, then what costs will we incur?
so we have. I'll try to answer your question more clearly. We have contracts under date with various contractors, as well as work that's being performed directly by the city. Those costs are being incurred on a daily basis. We normally process invoices 2 to 3 times per month, and the full cost of the station, as budgeted, also includes the lease cost for the temporary structures, which is going to be incurred over the next 2 years as we move forward. We're paying the designer for his fees and his charges associated with the temporary structure, as well as my own firm with the oversight of the construction.
Okay. Are there questions from other members of Ways and Means on this item? Councilor DeSorger.
So has the lease date started? I see that the buildings are there, and I've actually walked up and looked great, but have we started? Is the first day of the lease already begun for what's there?
No, the first day of the lease, the 22 months occurs when the structures are ready to occupy, and that has not occurred yet. We're anticipating that, as I said, sometime first, second week in September.
Okay. And you said 22 months, not 24, correct?
22, that's correct.
Okay. And what happens if it was beyond the 22, which I know we're all hoping that it won't be, but.
As part of the solicitation for the project, we had each of the leasing firms, one for the apparatus bay, one for the offices, include an additional 6 months of time in the lease. And if in fact that has to be invoked, that pricing has already been established under their contract. I believe rough numbers, I think it was $33,000 a month for the apparatus bays and $7,000 a month for the offices. So it's about $40,000 a month total.
40,000 a month
Per month additional.
if we were over 22 months.
Beyond the 22 months, that's correct.
Okay.
And those are from memory, Counselor. They may not be exact, but it's in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any counselors want to ask? Counselor Mayo.
I actually have a question for Marlo, because it's kind of tied into the work that's being done by the city. And I happened to take a walk past the temporary fire station yesterday and noticed some contract electrical workers in the building doing electrical work. And so what are they, do you know what they're doing that you couldn't do?
I think Neil can correct me if I'm wrong here, but there were certain things under the contract with the delivery of the 4 structures that was part of the delivery and setup, but everything else, I believe our central maintenance department is handling.
Marlo, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselors, I'm going to ask Liz, if I may. I think I saw her on here. Yes, there she is. Liz, can you tell us the source of the money that has been expended so far on this project?
So thus far, if you recall, number one, the city did vote $1 million from bond premium, so that was transferred. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is currently between the 15 million authorization and the 550 prior authorization, there's
Mhm.
about 2.1 million out in bands.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Can I also ask about the process, if I may? How does the temporary, and this may be mayor and you, does the temporary committee review all the bills, or are they reviewing change orders? And in other words, how do the bills get to you to pay? Who's seeing them before they go to you?
Well, actually, Neil can jump in on this as well, but
Okay.
he can do it at another level. But I will tell you that both Neil and the chief have to sign off on them before they come over, and then Neil can talk about his process with the committee.
Okay, thank you.
So as of right now, the bills are processed internally by my company. We review them against the contract values and the representative value of the work that is in place with each of the vendors. Upon our approval, we forward them along to the committee chairman. We send them to the procurement office, and we forward them to the chief as well. And all three parties are in agreement that if the invoices are correct, then they get sent to accounting to be paid.
Thank you. Are there any change orders that have come through on this project yet?
So we've had 3 change orders that have been processed, 2 related to the installation of fire suppression sprinklers in the building, and 1 which created a enhanced electrical service that was suitable for use in a wet environment. And the total of those 3 change orders have been are $65,482, which represents roughly 3% of the overall construction budget.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to recognize you. I'm sorry, I jumped in too quickly before. Go right ahead.
No, it was actually you addressed Neil. I jumped in, but I just wanted to address overall change order policy. We just prior to this meeting, we had it's a marathon tonight. It is not a sprint.
I'm sure.
We are at the 13-mile mark. Well, no, I'm going to say we're at the 10-mile mark. And we had a building committee meeting in which the building committee unanimously approved a change order policy. It is the same policy that is in place currently for the library. It is the same policy that was in place for the high school. I can't speak to the senior center, but Mr. Pilata certainly can because he was OPM on that. But I think we have established, and it was certainly discussed briefly this evening, that it probably should be the change order policy for the city, which would reside in the procurement department, I think, most appropriately. But yeah.
Excellent. That's great. That's good to know. Okay, everybody, is there any other questions that you have for Mr. Joyce at this point? If not, we're going to move on to the library project. Are we all set? Okay, so thank you, Neil, very much for being here. It always helps to hear it from, the guy in charge of the work, so we appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Okay, library, you're basically, Mr. Pilata, you're basically going to get the same questions that were asked before for the other project. So we will start off, actually, if you could just give us a brief review of where you are and what's going on.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Madam Chairman. The project has been bid, and the project construction start date will occur the day after the fire station moves into the temporary fire station. So at this point in time, we are meeting with the construction company, which is D.A. Sullivan of Northampton, who had a successful bid I think we sent you over a complete budget for your records, but their bid was 14,292,000, 262,000, I'm sorry. And what we're doing right now is a lot of the front end work that we normally would do on a project for procuring materials. Every part and piece of the new library has to be reviewed prior to being purchased and approved by the designer. And that's the process that we're in right now. As of today, we have 0 change orders and we have 0 requests for change orders. So we're doing pretty good, and that's actually, believe it or not, a pretty good indicator considering we've been under contract for about a month. The project has spent $1,258,682.04 to date. Some of those bills haven't been processed yet, but those are the ones that we have approved. And I don't believe we have the source of funds has hit the taxpayer yet at the local level. It's hit the taxpayer at the Commonwealth level because we did receive 2.5 grant payments to date. So we're in pretty good shape. I don't anticipate that we're going to be needing local funds for another few months.
Thank you. Anybody on the committee have any questions for Dan? I would like to just ask a couple, if I may. Again, Liz, that as Dan mentioned, this is coming out of our grants. So when is there an expectation once this project starts, when will we do a borrow in anticipation notes?
You're on mute.
Oh, you're muted.
Liz, you're muted.
You're muted.
I muted or Liz?
Oh, I am, sorry.
Okay, good.
Okay, as Dan mentioned, we had received an extra half. So we actually received over $4.7 million in the grant, and we've only expended, as Dan said, 1.2. So, yes, at some point during this year, as the big construction gets underway, probably about April, we'll probably analyze what we need through the end of the year, and then whether anything is necessary cash flow wise for fiscal 23. God, I can't believe I'm talking about fiscal 23. Okay. So I think originally Dan's didn't your cash flow say the end of December or December, something like that?
Yes.
But it could be, yeah, right. So I feel that likely we'll again analyze in April. That's our normal time for year-end borrowing, to make sure we've covered all capital projects, big and small, with bands. Okay. So we'll be analyzing that in April to see what we'll borrow for the end of 22 and the start of 23.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any more questions for Liz or for Mr. Pilata? Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much for being here. We once again appreciate everything. Thank you for coming out to speak with us and bring us up to date.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I also would like to, since we have moved a few things around, I also hope that everybody has been able to read what the mayor sent us in response to the questions that were on the agenda. I added some as well. You will see some of those things as well. I know for people that are listening, you don't have the documents in front of you. So what I would like to do, even though it might feel redundant to some of us, I would just like to ask some specific questions. I think that we can go down this list. But the first question I would like, because I think there's a number of people out there I'd like to be able to skip to this at this point. I would like to ask for the mayor to tell us, or for Liz to tell us, what the balance is in the mayor's discretionary funds. Now, before I do that, you will also notice on the agenda that we received information from the CDBG block grants. And there is a graph that shows us how many fiscal years are open. This is where the money comes from. When a grant is awarded, and Greenfield has usually been awarded $850,000 every year, the money gets distributed coming in from the state for us to help certain specific areas and businesses and people in town. And there are a team of people that get together and they talk to social service agencies, they talk to nonprofits, they talk to a lot of different people. They also put out applications for people who want to own their homes. There's a whole collection of things. There are decisions that are weighed through based on what is going on at the town at the time and based on the directives of the mayor. She has the final say in how these funds are distributed. I can tell you that a number of these funds go to homeowners that need mortgage assistance and mortgage help. And what was explained to me is that you borrow a mortgage amount, say you borrowed it in 2010, and now you have a mortgage and you've been paying it off and paying it off. Well, that fiscal year 2010 will close its books. However, if you sell the house and there's still part of the mortgage that's left, then that money comes back to the town and that's considered discretionary funding. And that is accounted in a fund called Mayor's Discretionary Fund. So the mayor is able to use those funds for a need that exists in the town. It is up to the mayor to make the decision about those funds. And some years there's not much there. Some years there are a number of funds. One of the things that I've learned is that the Chromebooks that we all share on the council, on council as counselors, that was paid for out of the mayor's discretionary fund. So I want people to understand that there is a method, there is a procedure, there is an audit of these funds, but you can't keep every single piece of money accounted for. You have to close fiscal years at a certain time. And if people pay off their mortgages early, or if they got a business loan and they closed the business early and they didn't use all the loan money, it comes back to the city, to the discretionary funds. So having said all that, either Liz or Mayor, would you let us know what the balance is in the mayor's discretionary funds?
I'm happy to, oops, wait a minute.
I'm out of order here, but I think there's some important pieces.
No copy, ma'am.
There we go. Sorry. You had that mostly correct, Chris. Mayor's Unrestricted is strictly for, and Lindsay Rowe is here. She can nod if I'm accurate on this or chime in. The Mayor's Unrestricted Fund is strictly the mortgage rehab fund piece of CDBG. And if they pay off their mortgage within 5 years of taking it out, that rehab mortgage, if they pay that off within 5 years, then that money goes back into the CDBG mortgage rehab fund. If it is outside of the 5 years, then it goes to Mayor's Unrestricted. And I believe call-in user 3 needs to mute, or you need to mute.
Yep, I could. Caller 3, would you please mute?
And so because we've had this program going on for quite some time, and because the market in Greenfield has been good for quite some time, people regularly over a period of the last I'm going to say 3 years, it could be a little bit longer, have actually traded up. They've sold their properties and they've traded up. Some of that money has come into Mayor's Unrestricted. So the good news is the market was good and kind to them, and perhaps they had a little bit money left over from paying off their mortgage to go and buy another house. So that is, we don't know the personal stories necessarily of every one of those people. But so to answer specifically your question, the balance right now is $148,463.27. And that is inclusive of the Viewpoint with Dennis Wade expenses that were taken out of that particular fund. Other things were planters, the 402 Main Street appraisal, different things that we don't have funded other ways, but do need to have happen. So that's the balance.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate that.
I'm
Are there any
happy to report. I was just going to say, whenever you would like a report on the balance in Mayor's Unrestricted, I'm happy.
Does that show up anywhere, Liz, on our operational budget?
No, it's considered a special revenue fund. Your
Okay.
operational budget is the general fund.
Okay, thank you. I should have known that. That should have been a no-brainer. But anyway, okay, thank you. I'd like now, if we could, please return to our order, which is number 5. We have a motion. Wait, hang on just a second here. Here we go. We have a motion. You'll in your packet. I'm sorry for skipping around, but I wanted those 2 things out of the way. We have limited time this evening. It would be on page 5. I would read this motion. It is order number fiscal year 22-004. The City Council, upon recommendation of Mayor Rita Gardner and in accordance with MGL Chapter 30B, Section 12B, ordered that the City Council approve a 3 parentheses 20-year contract between the City of Greenfield and Pan Am Railways. Majority vote is required. There is a letter attached that gives us some background information. But if you would like to ask, we also have a copy of the contract itself. If you have any questions for our DPW director or our mayor, please, now is the time to ask these questions.
Hey, Chris.
Okay.
Ed.
Yes, go ahead, Ed.
So Marlo, is this similar to the contract that we signed with Riverside Gill? Basically.
Yes, we got 2 consecutive systems, Riverside and Pan Am. They both would have came to you in June, but Pan Am's going through turnover with staffing. It was difficult getting a hold of them and agreeing to a contract. So that's why this is 2 months late. It was required under our sanitary survey through DEP. They gave me a 2-month extension due to those reasons of not being able to make contact with Pan Am and come to the agreement.
Very good. Thanks, Memo.
You're welcome, anytime.
Thank you. Is there any more questions or discussion, or does anybody need some more background information than what was provided to us by contract and memo? Okay, I'm hearing none, so I would ask that we vote on this motion. All in favor of the motion, would you please indicate by raising your hands and saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you very much. I got to go back into here now. I am sorry, I do apologize. I'm working with different screens here this evening. Okay, going back to, it is 6 o'clock and I intend to end this meeting about 20 after. So I just want to have everybody know that we will try to get through everything. We may not be able to. Our under discussion item 6, we have Recovering Care Act dollars, the amount that the city stands to receive. Just a quick overview, Liz, if we could just get that from you. Liz, are you muted?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
We just need a quick review because it has been, I just want people out there that are listening or watching us, I just want them
So
to know.
what I sent to you
Right.
was I highlighted the three main ones. The three main ones are FEMA, which is a reimbursable grant for very specific direct COVID charges. There isn't a limit on that. However, again, it's very restricted as the use. There is a time frame and an event date time frame that is established that in which you can incur costs and get reimbursed. The second one is the CARES Act, also known as CVRF. The maximal allowable, I will say, under this grant is $1,539,408. To date, we have spent $1,117,680. Again, this is restricted as well. We drew down the funds initially, and at this point in time, as the grant is winding down, if you go through the funds, it's going to turn to being reimbursable for the remainder. The third one is the ARPA funds, the American Recovery Plan Act. The city is going to receive, I'm sorry,
Okay.
over $5.1 million. We received half of it in fiscal 22. We were supposed to receive all of it at the end of 21, but we just received the piece we were missing for the first half. The second half definitely now won't be until August, at the earliest August of 23. This has a little more leeway than the other two grants I mentioned to you. It has certain what I referred to as buckets on which you may spend them. Additionally, I sent to you a whole list of numerous COVID-related grants that are outside. They're smaller, but they're outside these three main ones.
Thank you.
The fire department, the health department, even elections received some extra funds. Recreation did a program with COVID funds. So all of that. Also, we have expended over 600,000 in that. The largest one, I will say, because that sounds like a lot, the largest one was through economic development, and perhaps if you want more information, Lindsay can speak to that. It was a microloans grant to assist businesses, and that has a maximum award amount of 690,000, and they have expended 541,000 to date. So a lot of these grants have a maximum. It doesn't necessarily mean you will expend that. But it's a lot. I think if you looked at what I sent, it's a lot.
It is a lot
to keep track of. And outside of, I will just mention too, that outside of the American Recovery Act ARPA funds, there are also additional grants that departments can apply for. And I think some of the folks might have mentioned in their emails what they're trying to achieve with some of those, in applying for some of those.
Okay, it was very inclusive, and I appreciate your efforts very much. So I did hear you say, Liz, is this what I did hear you say, that we have half on board for those ARPA funds?
We do, just yesterday.
Yay!
Literally.
Okay, so what do we got?
We have 2.579 million. If you want the exact 2,579,267.02.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
All right.
Careful with that 2
That is
cents.
great. Does anybody have any questions for Liz regarding the money piece of these funds? I'm going to go next to the mayor, have her talk a little bit about how she envisions using these funds. I don't know how that happened. I just got my bank bill up on my screen. Okay. Okay, so Mayor, thank you. Thank you again. Could we just get some guidelines from you? What are you thinking about? What are you envisioning?
Well, I certainly have received many emails from various constituents who would like a public information session so they can share, and I plan to do that. I plan to do that in September, likely the 3rd week, given schedules for other things. It could be sooner. I don't have a firm date on that, but it's important to hear from everyone, and I want to encourage counselors to also chime in via email to me if you have an idea. My sort of guiding principles on this is, one, it's not a huge amount of money. I mean, it sounds like a lot in any one of our personal lives, and certainly for the city of Greenfield to have $5.158 $534 come out of the sky. I can't say that any other mayor has had that happen to them, so the burden is heavy. But I'm very delighted that it did happen, because it couldn't have happened at a better time. So my guiding star on that has been, I would like to see it used for things that we would love to fund, but we would never have the ability to fund off the taxpayer. You know, things that we just would not want to burden the taxpayer with. So we have a lot of needs in Greenfield, as everyone can imagine. And I've been thinking about it for quite some time. As Liz explained, well, ever since I found out that we would be receiving this money, I wish we were Pittsfield with their $65 million, half of which they've already received. or Northampton with their $32 million. But we did not fall in the same category, and our population is not the same as those. So a certain amount of it is dispersed via a population, per population. So back to the restrictions, which, as you I think I have shared with you. I believe I certainly shared it with the in the memo that I sent to the Doug Mayo's committee. Remind me what that is. Oh, you can help me out here, Doug. Community relations. Sorry about that. But we have four categories we can spend in. We can spend in infrastructure, broadband. So water, sewer, broadband. Now that sounds like a free-for-all and something we certainly have could use in all of those three areas. There are restrictions within each one of those categories of how you can spend the money. So we are under a consent order for much of our I&I on our water and sewer. And it just so happens that you cannot spend the money to, and it makes no sense, of course, but it's the federal government. You cannot spend the money to help any of your projects that are under consent order. So with water and sewer. I do intend to, I certainly have been thinking about and was approached by GSET to spend some money in the broadband area. The sooner we get GSET built out, the sooner we will they will be able to begin providing services all across the city. Certainly, I have heard now for 2.5 years how much people in the northern part of the city and other areas want to get their services, but they can only do what they can do based on the money that they are already receiving. So a little assistance there, I think, would be a good thing. The next thing is there's something called premium pay, which is payment to essential workers who were on the job 24/7 throughout the pandemic. Again, there are restrictions on that. As far as I'm concerned, every single worker in Greenfield should get some portion of that, but I am not allowed to do that. So I am allowed to do public, both police and fire, various people that were on the job. So we, Liz and I continue to pore over all of the guidelines to see where we can spend the money. I've certainly given that some thought. I have made no decisions at this point in time to speak of. Thirdly is, and this is a very important one because we did take an economic hit in Greenfield. So we are able to utilize some portion of the money for public health and safety and impacts, economic development impacts. So we certainly might be thinking about assistance to small businesses. We might be thinking about different areas in which we could impact the progress we want to make going forward as we hopefully come out of COVID at some point in time. So that's one. And then the third one, or the fourth one rather, if I'm not mistaken, and they're not particularly prioritized in order. So I'm not giving you prioritized orders. I'm just giving you what I recall. The other one is revenue recovery. We certainly, and that is the one that has, Liz can attest to this, that's the one that has the most restrictions on it. And the most complicated ones to understand. But, we lost revenue throughout the years. We actually, and I think she'll tell you when she gets around to in future meetings discussing at the end of year, we actually did a little better than we thought we would. So there certainly would be some money that we could put forward to revenue recovery on that, in that respect. But again, I just want to emphasize, and I think I have before, how very complicated anything you receive from the federal government is. I'm sure some of you have been reviewing, if nothing else, the interim final rule. God bless you, as have I. I believe in the email that I sent you today, I did give you a FAQ document that sort of distills in FAQ fashion, which I find to be one of the better ways to understand questions, and you can kind of pick and choose and get an understanding. So I would encourage all of you, and to certainly this Ways and Means Committee, to share it with other counselors so that they have a sense of what can and cannot be done in with the ARPA money.
Thank you, Mayor. I've just had somebody sign on as host. Now I'm co-host. I cannot, whoever the host is, would you please make sure we are recording? That's the most important piece. Okay.
Counselor Forgy, it's Kathy. The meeting is still being recorded. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mayor. Does
Yes,
anybody?
I'm sorry, that was a little long-winded. I know you want to sign off here short.
Right. Councilor Jarvis.
Yeah, I would just one thing I would probably encourage the mayor or somebody to do is maybe put up some of those questions and answers on the town webpage. Maybe if people were are bored in the city and they have nothing better to do and want to be really confused, they can read over some of those guidelines, because when they are done with it, they'll probably pull their hair out. Had to do that before. So
yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Councilor Jarvis. I think as we get closer to the public information session, we will share a lot of that information.
Does anybody have any more questions for the mayor, concerns, any comments for the mayor? Okay, I do have one, Mayor. It's not actually the same thing as, but it could be, and it regards the hybrid ability of the city of Greenfield to go ahead and have our virtual meetings, but with a hybrid twist to it. I know that it's important. Are we working on it?
Well, thank you for that. Actually, I have combed the, as I said, the interim final rule, and for my purposes, the easier one to answer. And I have found nothing that would facilitate that with ARPA money per se. I'm not saying it isn't there, it could be, but as I mentioned earlier, there's $148,000 in mayor's unrestricted, and I have already authorized Fernando to begin to order the equipment or whatever it is he needs for building out certainly John Zahn Center for hybrid, so that both the school committee and the city council can at some point in the future be able to conduct hybrid meetings there. When I say in the future, Fernando assures me it will be in the future, because he's already a reason why I went ahead and authorized that out of mayor's unrestricted was because it's available. It's a need that we have. It's one that we certainly didn't budget for, and he said to me, if we don't get in the queue now, we'll never get that equipment, given the supply chain issues. So that's the answer to that.
Thank you. Well, we are coming up. I said I was going to end the meeting at 6:20 to give us a chance to recollect at 6:30. I just want to mention a couple of things. We will continue on this list. If there's anybody who wants anything on the Ways and Means agenda for September, There will be a chairs meeting here shortly, and it would be important for you to get anything you're thinking about to Kathy and Tammy to be put on the chair's agenda so it can be discussed. I also know that people are interested, some of the records we talk about as having received them and everything else. Policies that are in existence, any kind of records, public records, please make the request through the town clerk's office. And please understand that if we are dealing with modifying policy, it might not be available right away. If a new policy is being written, I think it's important to understand people need time to do that job. Having said all of that, our next meeting is September 15th at 5:30. Again, I appreciate and thank you to all the members of Ways and Means for being kind enough to move the meeting to this evening. I really very much appreciate, I appreciate you and going the extra mile for me. So thank you. And
Chris,
after-
before you close, Jeannie's had her hand up. She's probably not in your box, so you couldn't see her.
You're absolutely right. And Ginny, I apologize. Please go ahead.
I just had a comment. I talked with the town administrator from one of our nearby towns that we talked about last week, and they the town administrator put in for the hybrid from FEMA, and she just did it, and she said if she's denied, she's going to use that what she has left over in the first set of COVID relief. Just she's
Doesn't
anticipating.
qualify under FEMA.
Well, she was putting it in because she thought, okay, that's fine. I'm just telling you that we had leftover money in COVID relief, and I was just sharing that information. That's all.
I will tell you that I did reach out to the CARES Act folks, and they also denied it.
Okay.
So I think the mayor's unrestricted is the way to go. FEMA money is only for direct dealing with the actual disease. It's not for aftermath. So
thank you.
I'm thinking as long as we can find the money someplace, and I'm very happy to hear that the mayor has moved forward with the authorization and everything else. So I do appreciate it. I am going to close this meeting. It is now 6:22. And I'm closing the meeting. And again, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you all for being here this evening, and I'll see you in like less than 10 minutes.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you.
Second by Mayo.
Thank you. The motion was made by Jarvis, seconded by Mayo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The meeting is closed at 6:23.